If you thought we were done, you must have missed the memo. This is part 3, the final chapter of our deep dive into the 90s fashion trends that really meant something. Drop your favorite 90s fashion piece in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. This trilogy is culture. And share this with somebody who still knows what 143 means on a pager. Let's finish what we started. Part 3 begins now. Now when it comes to footwear, there was something different about a dude who wore Wallabees. While everybody else chased flash and flex, the Wallaby man moved on a quiet frequency. These weren't the kicks that you wore to stunt, they were the kicks that you wore when you already knew who you were. Clark Wallabees had almost a regal calm to them. Imported from Jamaica but baptized in Staten Island, they gained their real street credibility through hip-hop, and more specifically through Wu-Tang Clan. When Raekwon and Ghostface started rocking Wallabees in videos, interviews, and album photo shoots, the shoe went from overseas obscure to East Coast essential. But they didn't just wear them, they gave them a whole new mythos. Ghost would dye his Wallabees custom colors, bright yellows, navy blues, even wild purple suede. They became part of the identity, not just footwear, but a symbol of flyness with a philosophical twist. And for those who understood the roots, the Wallaby was a quiet nod to Jamaican rude boy fashion, where Clarks had been a staple since the 70s. Caribbean kids in New York carried that legacy with them. And by the time that it hit the rap world, it became something new, a cultural handshake between Kingston and the boroughs. Wallabees weren't trendy, they were timeless. You didn't wear them because you saw them on TV. You wore them because somebody with some sense put you on. And once you laced up, you walked different. There's something about a beanie that made it more than just a way to stay warm in the 90s. It became a full-blown identity piece. Not flashy, not branded, just a tight-knit, no-nonsense signal that you were dialed in, and you didn't need a billboard to prove it. The beanie was a minimalist flex, a crown for the cold, yes, but also a comfort blanket for the quiet, the stylish, and the ones who move with that don't ask me nothing energy. It didn't scream for attention, it just sat low, like it was holding secrets under the fabric. In places like New York, Philly, and Detroit, a black or navy beanie was a part of the uniform. You'd see it layered under bubble coats and goose downs paired with leather bombers or oversized hoodies. And on the West Coast, beanies had a whole different tone, looser, longer, sometimes slouched in the back with a plaid shirt and a steady stare that let you know you should cross the street if you didn't belong. For girls, it was a part of the around-the-way tomboy look. Jeans, t-shirt, puffer vest, and a dark beanie over slicked back hair and hoops. It was soft but tough, cute but not corny. If you had the confidence to rock a beanie and not hide behind a glam look, you were good. Over time, fashion evolved. Logos got bigger, accessories got louder, but the beanie, it stayed the same. Just a simple knit cap with no ego, no agenda, and no need to explain. Now plaid wasn't just a pattern in the 90s, it was a signal. Plaid and flannel in the 90s hit different depending on where you were standing. On the West Coast, it was a part of the street identity. Plaid flannel shirts, especially buttoned at the collar and left loose at the bottom, were worn like armor in neighborhoods where fashion wasn't about what was trending, it was about where you were from. Crips had their blues, Bloods had their reds. The colors weren't just aesthetic, they were territorial, and flannel became the unofficial uniform of that lifestyle. On the East Coast, flannel had its own wave. While it didn't carry the same gang affiliations, it still came with attitude. Up top, it was more layered, paired with bubble coats, Timberlands, hoodies, and jeans with that rugged, unbothered energy. You weren't out to impress, you were out to stay warm, look clean, and post up without breaking a sweat. The East Coast flannel vibe was less militant and more get money, stay sharp, and handle business. Flannel was accessible, that's why it hit so hard. You didn't need a stylist or a plug, you just needed the right colors, the right size, usually 1 or 2 sizes too big, and the right attitude to rock it like it meant something. And it did mean something. It meant that you were grounded. It meant you knew what fit you and what worked for your body, your block, and your soundtrack. It mean you didn't have to try too hard, you just had to show up right, and real ones always did. There was nothing lightweight about a 90s backpack, not just in weight, though they were definitely stuff like survival bags, but in what they represented. Your backpack in the 90s wasn't just about carrying books, it was carrying the world. Kids and teens used their backpacks to project who they were, or at least who they were trying to be. And even though it was technically a utility item, the backpack became one of the most personal style statements of the era. You could walk into a classroom, a lunchroom, or city bus and know exactly who had style, who had hustle, and who had the snacks, all from the backpack they were carrying. At the top of the food chain sat the Jansport. If you had one of those with the suede bottom and the loud color, you were showing off without having to open your mouth. It wasn't about the price, it was about the presentation. The way the straps felt just right. The way you only wore one strap even though it wrecked your whole back. The way you customized it with the whiteout graffiti, a Sharpie signature, or even a D-ring full of keychains that clicked like coins when you walked. But beyond the flex, backpacks were also a safe space for kids coming up in neighborhoods where you didn't talk too much about your home life. Your bag told your story. It might have had your little brother's homework in there. Maybe your mixtape. Maybe your funeral t-shirt for a friend who didn't make it to junior year. I mean, the bag held more than school stuff, it held weight. And when school wasn't a part of your reality, the backpack still stayed. The dudes on the corner had backpacks. The bootleg man had a backpack. Even the plug had one. It wasn't just a student thing, it was a street thing. If you were moving through the world and needed to keep it all with you, a backpack was how you rolled. They also became the staple for underground rappers in the 90s like Boot Camp Click and Black Moon, even Grand Poobah, who was a fashion legend in his own right. No branding needed, no fancy compartments, just straps, pockets, and identity packed in. As a West Coast rap fan in the 90s, there was a certain uniform that told you exactly where somebody was from, without a single word being said. If you saw creased khakis, a white tee that hit below the thigh, and Chuck Taylor so clean that they looked fresh out the box, you weren't just looking at an outfit, you were looking at West Coast gangbanger fashion, a style forged in heat, history, and hard living. The core of the style was rooted in utility and discipline. Oversized Dickies or Ben Davis pants, always pressed, always clean. Solid colored tees or tank tops, no logos, no noise. Flannel shirts, often buttoned at the collar and open at the bottom, a signature move of gang culture in South Central and beyond. And of course, the kicks, Chuck Taylors or Nike Cortezes, laced tight, paired with white socks pulled up high. Sometimes you catch a beanie, sometimes a bald head, but the energy was always the same, still sharp and unshakable. But here's the twist. What started in the neighborhoods as deeply personal and political eventually made its way to the mainstream culture. You'd see Ice Cube on TV dressed like one of the dudes on the corner. You'd catch Snoop in a blue flannel on The Box or Rap City, calm as ever but dripping in Crip code. Nate Dogg, DJ Quick, MC8 all wore the look with authority. Even artists outside of gang life adopted parts of the uniform because it represented more than just the affiliation. It represented respect, control, and legacy. Movies like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, and South Central put the look on a global map. Suddenly, kids in other cities were sagging khakis and lacing up Chucks without fully understanding the history stitched into those threads. And while that brought visibility, it also brought misunderstanding, because what worked as fashion in New York or Atlanta might be life or death in LA. It was a style born from struggle, clean lines in a chaotic world. And when you saw somebody step out in it, you didn't just look, you paid attention. Now this one is for the ladies, because in the 90s, some of the hardest fashion statements didn't come from the streets, they came from the roller rink, the music video, or the girl stomping through the mall with the bamboo earrings and a can of hairspray in her purse. And nothing captured that era of style meets motion like biker shorts. There was a power in their simplicity. You didn't need to be rich to wear them. You didn't even need to be athletic. You just needed to know how to walk in them. And once you did, it was a wrap. Biker shorts didn't just turn heads, they shifted style codes. What made them so essential was that they moved with you. You can dance in them, run errands in them, post up outside your cousin's house and talk mess in them, and you didn't need to constantly fix them like a skirt. They were made to stay put, which meant you could live your life in them without interruption. Even outside the spotlight, biker shorts became the go-to uniform for teen girls and young women navigating their glow-up. You'd see them at the skating rink, under the big Looney Tune tees and matching socks. You'd catch them at cookouts with a flannel tied around the waist and a twisted side ponytail. Biker shorts became a symbol of the unapologetically fly black girl, the one who didn't dress for male approval but knew she had the sauce either way. And here's the wild part, they never really left. They dipped out for a bit when denim minis and baby fats took over, but they came roaring back in the 2010s like they never had took a break. Why? Because real comfort, real confidence, and real drip don't ever go out of style. Back then, if you had on biker shorts and some Reebok classics or felines, you weren't just comfortable, you were crushing the fit. And if somebody had a problem with it, that was their problem. Now, there were loud jackets in the 90s, and then there was the 8-ball jacket. Louder than car alarms, brighter than Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper, and more controversial than a Jordan vs. Iverson debate in a barbershop. If you saw somebody walking wearing one of these, you looked, you stared, you whispered, because 8-ball jackets didn't just say I'm fresh, they said I'm fearless. These wild high-gloss leather jackets were like graffiti you could wear, covered in oversized numbers, color-blocked panels, and that unmistakable 8-ball graphic slapped dead in the middle of the back. These joints were made to get attention. You couldn't be shy in an 8-ball jacket. The whole point was to disrupt the room, and in the early 90s, especially in New York and the East Coast, this was a cheat code. But yo, before smartphones, before text, before DMs and story views, if your hip was buzzing in the 90s, you were officially in the loop. The pager wasn't just a gadget, it was a status symbol, a digital crown clipped to your waistband that said, somebody needs me. Pagers, aka beepers, hit different depending on who was wearing them. In hospitals, they meant urgency. In high-rise offices, they meant business. But in the streets, in the barbershop, on the corner, or in the schoolyard, a pager meant you were connected. Whether you were a hustler, a class clown, a young entrepreneur, or a teenager who convinced their moms it was for emergencies only, a pager gave you clout. And in the 90s, clout was currency.
Dad, I want a pager. A Motorola?
Really? What's in it for me?
Most people kept it clipped to their jeans, front and center, like a badge. You'd hear that beep, 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 and suddenly everything stopped. You'd pull it off your belt, squint at the LCD screen, and nod like you had a chess move to make. The number 143 meant I love you. 911 meant hit me back now. And if your pager showed up with a coded message made from numbers and punctuation marks, you were probably decoding flirtations or secret beef like it was Morse code. For the culture, pagers represented more than communication. They were mobility. You didn't need to sit at the desk to handle your business. You could be anywhere, on the stoop, at the gas station, walking to the bodega, and still be reachable. That mattered, especially in communities where phones weren't always guaranteed. A pager let you feel important even if you weren't official. You could play the part without having the whole playbook, you feel me? And they looked cool. You had the classic black Motorola joints, the see-through neon joints that the girls used to match with their outfits, even gold-plated knockoffs that lit up like slot machines. Some folks even had two on their hip, one for business, one for personal. And when the Motorola two-way dropped in the late 90s, woo! That was a flex before people even knew what a flex was. You could actually have full-blown text communication with your people. Now that was next level, but now we take it for granted. And we are done. The trilogy is now complete. From the everyday gear to the street-certified staples, and now the personal signatures that made the fit yours, we've walked through the era where fashion wasn't just about looking good, it was about knowing who you were. And now that we done blessed y'all with another classic, now it's your turn to do your part. If the series took you back, hit that like button. Drop your favorite fashion moment from the 90s in the comments. Subscribe so you don't miss what we're about to drop next, and send this to somebody who used to walk around with a pager like they were on call 24/7. We didn't just dress the part in the 90s, we lived it. Respect to the era, respect to the culture, and respect to you for taking this walk with us. We'll see you in the next series. Until next time, stay fly, stay grounded, and stay legendary. Peace out.